chug, 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 chug,
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wizard Staff Podcast. I'm your host, Blake.
And I'm Guy.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. We do drink and swear, so you've been warned. Please drink responsibly when playing children's card games. Tonight, we are going to be discussing Command Fest online during the year 2020. How do you feel, Guy?
I feel pretty good. It's been a while since I've gotten to play any Commander games in the traditional sense of how you play Commander with paper magic, and I feel like this was a close way of, how we can do this in these times, socially distancing ourselves, trying to stay safe and healthy. And I was skeptical about the first time that they did this, but come around the second time, it was actually very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to giving some of my thoughts about this.
Because, to clarify, you went to Command Fest, right?
Well, I didn't have to go anywhere. I just stayed indoors. I was in my pajamas the whole time.
Yeah, that's how you should do it. Alright, yeah, so we're talking about the Command Fest that happened this year. Also, the future of Commander products, being Commander Collection Green and Commander Legends that were discussed a bit during this event. We're also going to talk about how the Command Fest worked this year, our general thoughts on the event, and how it operated online versus in person. Because I went last year to Command Fest 2019 in person. So, I went one year, Guy, you've gone this year, so we're even, and maybe next year we'll go together.
Let's hope.
But before we get into that, we need to talk about what we're drinking, because we drink every episode.
Yes. So I have with me this Kyla Hard Kombucha. It is lavender lemonade. It's definitely the most interesting drink that I've ever had on this podcast. And it tastes very much like a kombucha tea with just a lot of carbonation. I think one of the better ways I would say it is slightly better than the Flintstone gummies.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's the ground taste, and then there's a hint of lavender and lemon. So it's definitely the most interesting beer I've had in a long time. I didn't want to do something basic. This is Command Fest Online number 2. So I was like, let's go wild. You
crazy boy.
Crazy.
That definitely sounds like quite the drink. Can you even taste the alcohol?
With the kombucha, the lemon, the lavender, and the carbonation, I cannot taste the actual alcohol. So, yeah.
Alright. I am outclassed because I am drinking a humble Golden Pilsner by Fremont Brewing that's made in Seattle, Washington. Fun fact, same location as where Command Fest 2019 was. So, and it's got all this packaging on it, talking about sustainability and the energy uses of their facilities and how they make the product. And I'm like, they suckered me in, they got me. Environmental studies major, environmental policy minor. You fucking got me to buy your product. Got me.
Blake's a hard sucker.
Yeah, and it's it's alright. It's a Pilsner. It's alright.
Okay. Before we get into this, I want to give 2 kind of shout-outs real quick. So the first is shout-out to the entire continent that is Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Because apparently I woke up this morning, maybe yesterday morning. The days blur together so much. And we were trending as number 60 on top podcasts in gaming, which I was like, what? Never thought that would happen. So,
wow.
Thanks, Australia.
Yeah, you're ahead of the curve.
It is my favorite continent. It is home to my favorite animal.
Koalas?
The koala bear.
Oh, I called it.
I feel like that's very basic to say about Australia, but I'm sorry.
Guy's trying really hard not to be basic. He's drinking the kombucha.
Crikey, mate. Yes, I am really trying to appeal to my inner Australian. I've been there once.
Therefore, you're an expert. Okay.
I am. And then the second kind of giveaway or shout out thing that I was going to bring up is I'm doing a little giveaway through our Twitter, Facebook. I did an altar of Force of Will from Eternal Masters, and I'm giving that away because I spent money on the showcase version, so I have an extra one that I just want to give away. And it's very easy to enter. Just go subscribe to our YouTube channel, or go and donate to the Supporting Black Trans Lives Matter GoFundMe, and I will include both links. You just gotta give a little money, send us proof, and I want to say, I'm gonna say 2 weeks from when this comes out, I will do the picking of the winner. So, stay tuned.
We will try to announce that on the following episode, correct?
Yes.
All right, so stay tuned for that. Well, should we get to the topic at hand now?
Let's dive right in.
All right, so I'm gonna kind of talk about both of these Command Fests. I just want to bring everyone up to speed. So, like, Commander is a format. That's why you're here, of Magic the Gathering. And in 2019, they held 3 locations in which you could go in person to play Commander all day, and it was awesome. And then they planned to do that again in 2020, but, COVID happened, and we all needed to social distance, and we were all kind of bummed, but there was still this demand to, come together and play Commander. So what happened was, on June 6th, Channel Fireball announced that they were going to host this event online digitally, and you could go to their Twitch channel, and view a stream of a bunch of key community members playing Commander games and talking about Commander. And you yourself could also use this app called Spell Table to play games. So that, in conjunction with the Channel Fireball Discord server, you could play games with people from honestly anywhere in the world. And this was a free event, but it was a suggested $5 donation to the Red Cross. And they were also trying to get rid of their Command Fests in a box that were each $99, and they had Soul Ring promos and Path to Exile promos because they thought, hey, it's going to be in person, but that didn't fucking happen. So they were trying to kind of sell those on the side as well. But they had really cool guests like Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and then it had various Commander Advisory Group members like Olivia Gilbert Hicks and Rachel Agnes and Shivam Bhatt and Charlotte Sable and Adam Stibbs. Had a couple people from Loading Ready Run, Pleasant Kenobi, Spice 8 Rack, and a few other people like Eric Levine, Riley Knight, and probably people you most know is Jimmy Wong and Josh Lee Kwai from the Command Zone podcast. So it had a whole bunch of people. And it was pretty successful. They raised, I don't remember how much money they raised, but it was a pretty successful event. And it was just that one day.
I think it was around the $20,000 mark.
Oh, wow.
Don't quote me on that, but we can go back and look. One of the other notable guests, though, that you forgot about is Sheldon Menery, because this was also the event that kind of ignited, or I guess was the kickoff point for when, we were going to say Commander Death Triggers work.
Oh, yeah! It was during that time, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a panel that they did, so you could either be watching stuff through the Twitch or you could be playing games, but one of the panels that they did, they had a few of the RC members and someone else, and they made this announcement that, Commander Death Triggers now work.
Yeah, so that was kind of the event. Guy and I did not participate. I know I had work that day. I was really bummed. But I watched some snippets of it, so I kind of pieced it all together, and it was very successful. So they ended up deciding before the year was even over, like, hey, let's just do Command Fest Online 2. And this time, it was August 22nd and 23rd. This time they made it 2 days, not just one. And it was very similar to the previous event, but different in some ways. Like, it was still hosted by Channel Fireball digitally. You could still watch their stream. You still played via Spell Table and the Channel Fireball Discord server. It's still a free event. It was still a suggested $5 donation, but this time it was to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which I think was a good move, very responsible. And they had, again, games of Commander between all these prominent community members, some cosplayers, a lot of the rules committees, I think all of them were there. And then they also had a few people from Wizards of the Coast do a panel at the beginning of the event called The Future of Commander. And, well, Guy, do you want to talk about that panel? Because a lot happened in that panel. I think it's actually one of the reasons why this event was so successful. It got a lot of eyes because of the beginning panel.
Yeah, it was definitely the kickoff point for this event. I would say, I think at some point I saw that 6,000 people were tuning in to watch, which felt very big. It was Gavin Verhey, Ari Nye, and then Jules Robbins. And what they did was they spent about an hour and a half going through all the things that we can expect for Commander for 2020. The first one is Commander Collection Green, which, if you don't know, is a product that they are going to start doing that is very similar to the signature spell books that you can buy towards a certain planeswalker, and it comes with some really nice reprints that all have new art. And this Commander Collection Green is meant to be cards focused on a green theme. And if you haven't been listening for a while, but Blake and I did an episode where we guessed what 8 cards were going to come out, and neither of us got any cards correctly.
Yeah, so we're fucking idiots.
We are definitely idiots. So first we have Omnath, Locus of Mana. We have the Freyalise Planeswalker that can be your commander. We have Worldly Tutor for its first ever reprint. Sylvan Library, Bane of Progress, Seaborn Muse, Soul Ring, and Command Tower. So, in total, this is a $142 value, which feels pretty good, especially if this is going to be sold at a pretty fair price, I would hope.
Yeah, I'll just say this now. I think that's going to be the key factor in this product. I think this was a home run if this is reasonably priced. And I'm hoping, because it's both in foil and non-foil, that we can hopefully get some of these at a decent price.
Yes, I hope so too. I do want to say though, and I'm not going to hold you to this, Blake, but I looked over our, predictions for, who was going to guess the most number of cards that were reprinted.
Oh no.
And so far, of this year, I have 6 of my guesses being reprinted, while you have 5.
Shit.
So, but because neither of us got any of these correct in this product, I'm not going to hold you to it to buy this for me.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to say that I guessed more correctly so far. The year's not over.
Oh, okay, the year's not over. I can still make a comeback, maybe.
Maybe. And then, so we have Commander Collection Green. That's very exciting. Then we have Commander Legends, which was teased last year, and so we've known about this for a while. But the idea that was kind of presented to us was Commander meets Draft. And a lot of us were kind of like, what does that look like? And so, we finally got to kind of see what it is and kind of like how it plays out. So, this is a draftable set. The packs will contain 20 cards. 2 of those cards in every pack are designated to be a legendary. You will get a foil in every pack. Not that that's a huge thing, but I mean, it is nice. Partner is a returning mechanic, and not just partner, 41 monocolored partners are going to be in this set. Of the 72 new legends that will be available. And I believe, this is my speculation, but my guess is that 69 of those legendaries of the 72 will be creatures, and then maybe we'll get like 3 planeswalker commanders. Maybe it's more like 70 and then 2, but I do expect to get 2 planeswalker commanders.
Are you saying that because like literally yesterday 2 were spoiled?
No, that's completely irrelevant because that was Zendikar.
Oh, right. See, they all just start to blend together. There's so many goddamn products.
Well, okay, I see what you mean there. So partner returns, 72 new legends, and now the draft environment. They went through that. So, you start by opening up a pack, you pick 2 cards, and you pass it around the table. It's suggested that you do this in a group of 8. Your deck will actually be 60 cards, not 100. The singleton rule does not apply, and the reason why that they brought back partners is because they wanted to be able to make sure you could color fix your deck and have it be flexible where you could have interchangeable cards to be your commander, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you weren't just left with like a bunch of cards as you drafted and like, wait, this doesn't match the color identity. Crap. Like, apparently that happened very rarely, but they still needed to address it.
Yes, and this product's been in the work for like 5 to 6 years, and part of the reason is because they wanted to really test the partners that they were making to make sure that none of them were like super busted, because of the partners that were originally released as just partners, because those tended to be some of the more high power commanders that exist in our format. So they really tried to like make sure that this was going to be okay for Commander in general. They didn't want to have like a bunch of high powered commanders just like storm the gates.
Like the first time.
Yes.
Okay.
So the set size, there's 361 cards, no basic lands, which is crazy. So that must mean that the lands that you'll be able to get from the packs are going to be focused on the multicolor, because in a draft environment you can just, slot in as many basics as you need to make the deck functional. Of the 361 cards, 165 of them are new cards.
So about half.
About half, yeah, which is pretty cool. And then, in addition to the 361 cards, there will be 32 legendaries that get reprinted in this new etched foiling that can only be found in the set boosters. Well, actually, I guess they can be found in both of these normal products. So the set boosters and the collector boosters.
Yeah, it's both.
So in total, there's like 104 different legendaries that you can draft to be your commander.
Yeah, and on the stream, Gavin showed a quick, like 10-second video of the foiled card itself. It's basically like foiling on the frame of the card. I don't think that the art is foiled or the text box is foiled, but like the entire rest of it. And it has this certain textured look. It's not bumpy, but it looks like it's textured. Is that how you describe it to people who aren't able to view it visually?
I'll include a visual of it on YouTube, and you can kind of like take a look for yourself. I'm not sure, kind of based off the video that I saw, what it's supposed to feel like. It'll definitely be interesting to like get your hands on one.
Well, they said it's supposed to feel smooth, like it's not supposed to be bumpy, if that's what you're saying. Yeah.
We did get to see some new cards, and just to kind of like give a disclaimer now, we're not going to in-depth talk about the cards. We're just going to kind of like mention who we got to see, because we'll do a whole set review when this actually comes out. So we did get to see the new Sengir, who we knew was coming, and he has partner. He's a mono black commander. We got to see the highly requested Halana and Alina, who were in the Magic story Under the Silver Moon, which was originally from Innistrad. And I think by the time that this episode comes out, we should know the sets for the future next year, 2021, because this coming September 1st, there will be the Zendikar Rising preview, and they should be talking about all the sets that we're going to see next year as well, which I have... My prediction is we'll be going back to Innistrad and back to Phyrexia, and then we'll probably get to a new plane. So, alright, just saying that now.
I'm not going to make a bet with that.
We saw the Prismatic Piper, who is, I believe, the first common legendary creature, and this is meant to be as a basic that can be used. It's kind of like a basic land, is the way that they described it. You always will have access to one, and it's the commander that can like kind of choose its own color to help you in the draft environment.
It's, again, that it's to solve that problem of making sure when you draft this, you never get screwed over. You will always have some commander combination to play. Yeah.
Yeah. And then one of the last cards that we got to see, Keeper of the Accord. And we do want to talk about this one just a little bit, because one of the big highlights of Commander Legends is that there are going to be some powerful white cards in this set. And I just want to know your thoughts, Blake, and I can give some of my own. Do we think that this first card, Spoiled, is going to live up to that expectation? So, Keeper of the Accord. 3 white, creature, human soldier. It's a 3/4. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if that player controls more creatures than you, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if that player controls more lands than you may search your library for a basic plains, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Thoughts?
So, just to be clear, this kind of is a catch-up card. Like, if your opponents have more creatures, it makes you creatures. If they have more lands, it lets you put your plains onto the field. I will say, the release of this card, it seemed like it was kind of a mixed bag of people really liking it, and some people saying that it was not enough. It's not powerful enough to help white. So, to that I say, it's going to take a couple years for all of these good white cards to come out, and I'm hoping that they are powerful. And I think at the very least, this is definitely a step in the right direction. I think it only will go in like mono white decks. I don't really like, because as soon as you start splashing an additional color, you just have almost always better ramp options at the very least. I think that's it's nice that you're getting these creature tokens, but I think this is primarily going to be used for that ramp, because it's mono white's main problem, one of its main problems.
I agree. I think the only other deck that you would want to really splash this in is probably Boros.
Yeah, maybe.
I agree. It's going to take some time for us to really have white kind of pick it up and, be on like equal terms with all the other colors.
Mm-hmm.
And I like where this is going. I think one of the downsides to this is I feel it benefits the white player if they're actually going not first. And even then, I feel like, to really get the most out of this, you're probably always wanting to be going last. Because that's just going to increase the chances of you making sure that your opponents, especially if they don't have green, that'll guarantee that, okay, they will most likely not be having more lands than me, if that makes sense.
Right, it's sort of the idea of making sure you don't die is not the same as winning. And that, if Mono White's going to get all of these catch-up mechanics, if you do finally go to parity with your opponents, then they start now working with each other and only work once you, again, start falling behind. And to compare, the reason I really liked Mangara the Diplomat when it came out fairly recently is because it's good whether you're behind, it's good whether you're at parity, and it's good when you're ahead. It's good in all situations, whereas this card is only good when you're behind. It doesn't work when you're at parity, and it doesn't work when you're ahead. So I think Watsu's taking baby steps, and I just want to say, I think, all right, good baby step, right direction. I want to encourage you to take a couple more. You can do more.
Yeah, and then I guess well, okay, I don't want to say anything else really about White, because we will see what happens in Commander Legends, and then we can kind of talk more about, was this successful?
Right.
And, the last thing that was spoiled for Commander Legends is the Battle Bond enemy cycle, where we get the red-white, green-blue, red-blue, black-green, and black-white lands entering untapped because you have more than 2 opponents. So that's very exciting as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like now we've talked enough about the new stuff, and we should actually talk about Command Fest. I feel like we're 30 minutes into this, and we've just been kind of speculating on the new stuff. So let's just get into Command Fest now.
Sure, let's talk about what actually kind of happened. Yeah. So, Guy, you were actually in this event. Do you want to kind of talk about how you actually started getting into this game?
Yeah, so the first day I spent watching panels, and I will say that the panels aren't... Well, the panel with Commander Legends and all that was exciting because it was new stuff. I watched 2 games, and it's kind of hard to actually keep the attention, I feel like, just because I'm not as engaged, and oftentimes people are just kind of making chit-chat on the sides. Unlike when you watch a Game Nights video, and it's very hyper-focused just on the game.
Yes, yeah. I totally know what you mean, because I like when things are edited and focused and direct and clear. I really struggle to enjoy Twitch. I know many of you listening might like watching Twitch streams, but the fact that things are often unedited and unfocused, I personally kind of lose interest, and I know that other people feel the same way. I know not everyone feels that way, but I know you and I do. Yeah.
So instead of doing that on the second day, I actually was okay, I'm actually going to play some games. So it's very easy to do this, and I hope that they actually do a third one this year, just because that would be a great way to kind of end out the year. And with Commander Legends coming out, I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about and do. So all you had to do was join the Channel Fireball Discord. You set your power level with your username in a certain channel. You just kind of do this hashtag and then register power 7, and then you get into another channel and you just type in a code, and it will generate a link for you and say, okay, you're in this pod, we are going to wait until we have 4 people, and then we'll send you a link and you can get started. So it was, I would say the longest I ever had to wait for a game was probably 8 minutes.
Okay.
And that actually didn't feel that long, because it was good to kind of take a breather in between a game, and then I would just shuffle up my deck a bit, make sure that I'm ready to go. And then once I got the link, I just joined. It was also very easy to set up spell table because I could use my phone as my camera. And so I would just do that, add a little tripod thing, and yeah, pretty cool. Spell table, very intuitive to use as well. Good job on them.
I think it's one of the main reasons why they use spell table, because most people actually don't have webcams, but most people these days have cell phones, and so that's just making this really, really accessible to the average person. And I like what you said earlier, which is you didn't mind the fact that you had to wait 8 minutes between games, because I remember that was one thing that shocked me going to the Command Fest 2019 in Seattle, was the fact that you're just grinding games all day. You actually need to take breaks between games. I think the average Commander player maybe plays 1 to 3 games a night, but when you're playing 7 or 8 games all day, it gets really, really tiring, because EDH demands a lot of your mental attention.
Yes, and I will say by the end of the day, I was definitely okay, I've gotten my fix, I'm good now.
Okay, so that's how you kind of got into the games. I'm kind of curious about, before you get into these games, you have to talk about your power level of your deck. And I know it's a little bit of a contentious topic and likely will be for the reasonably foreseeable future. So how did that experience go for you?
Well, I set myself as a 7, and I felt the 2 decks that I was going to primarily play, which were Perforos and Avacyn, those were 7s. The ideas are aggressive burn damage, and by turn 8 or 9, I'm trying to combo out to destroy everyone's lands. So that was kind of okay, that's where I see this, and I would get on, I would explain my combos, and people would say yep, that sounds about right, so we're good there.
Mm-hmm.
No one would say oh no, that's not what I expect. I feel the people who signed up for 7s kind of had the same headspace.
Okay. So to clarify, when you got into the game, even though you had already said in the program what power level you are, you still talked to the people and said, hey, this is my power level that I think my deck is at, and explained it a little bit?
Yes, and I was actually the only one who would do that kind of thing. I think people just kind of expected people to understand, I'm playing my Tatyova deck. Everyone should kind of know what that does, and they wouldn't really talk about it. But I also understand not everyone wants to kind of talk 2 or 3 minutes about their deck. They just want to start playing games.
Yeah. Well, that's a good example, because I don't know, I've seen Tatyova decks compete at CEDH tables. I'm not joking, that is serious. And I've seen Tatyova decks that are very, very, very casual. And so that's, I think, a perfect example of you still want to have personal conversations with people.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me of a point that one of my opponents brought up. And this wasn't for the game that we were playing, but he just kind of wanted our opinion on something where he was playing that new Fairy Warlock from Eldraine.
Leela, Artful Provocateur.
Yes. So in his game, when he played that, he said it's just very casual, it's meant to make fairies, and it's kind of like a fairy tribal deck. It's not meant to be strong. But when he got on, someone got mad at him because they were that's a power 8 commander or whatever. And he tried to explain no, I didn't build it that way. I built it in the sense of oh, this is meant to just be casual, nothing strong, I don't have any major win con. So yeah, I think it's appropriate, but there was just some disagreement there.
Yeah, I think people definitely see certain commanders that can be very high power level, and they assume they err on the side of caution that it is the highest power level version of that card. So I think that person did the right thing and just had a conversation like, no, this is actually what this deck is. It's not the most powerful version of it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So how did your games actually like play out?
So, being in the 7, I would say that it didn't feel like it was a 7 most of the time. I was definitely playing the way that I typically play with my decks. And I talked to my playgroup about this a little afterhand, where I felt like, we either play really aggressively in our playgroups, or people don't tend to play as aggressively when playing with new people. Because it just kind of got to the point where, like, I was doing so much damage with Perforos every turn, but nobody would see me as, like, a threat or, like, try to deal with me. Or they would just kind of do it very passive-aggressively, and they wouldn't really, like, solve the problem. And it was just like, oh, okay, I'm going to, I guess, pass, let this go. And it would get to the point where, everyone's in the single digits. They're like, okay, now's the time to strike, and then that's when they would, like, take the opportunity. So it wasn't quite what I expected, and I don't know if it's hard for me to say if that's, like, my warped perspective of being in a more aggressive playgroup, or if that is because people didn't really quite understand, like, what a 7 meant, or if the 7 was, like, just kind of the typical, not typical, like the, what's the word? The default number to, like, give your deck. Because I saw some quote-unquote 7 decks do absolutely nothing. I was just like, what are you, like, some guy had Kaikar, and I don't even remember that thing, like, ever popping off when Kaikar can be a very strong commander. I've seen it before with my playgroup.
Right. That's kind of the whole joke, like, oh, my deck's a 7. Everyone thinks their deck is a 7.
Yeah. And I listened to the EDH Rec podcast just recently, where they kind of talked about, the power level in Command Fest, because they saw some of the data, and they saw that, like, most of the games played were at the 6 and 7 power level. And they kind of talked about where there should be a better distinction of kind of like the middle, where, just for fun and casual, there's really little to no difference unless if you're, like, truly trying to build your deck sub-optimally, where you can't really, it's just, like, 100 cards. There's no real, like, strategy to it, and those can typically kind of compete with the precons. I would say that the precons are maybe, like, a little bit stronger, but those don't tend to have, like, big blowout ways of winning the game. And then you have, like, 5 through 6, 7 through 8, and then you can kind of take it in that category and try and flesh out that part more so people can understand where their decks are meant to be.
I'd like to kind of pull back for a second and ask 2 questions. One, do you still feel like the power level is, like, the whole power level conversation is still kind of a difficult and somewhat unsuccessful issue happening?
Yes and no. I think it's only difficult when we don't take the opportunity to talk about, the power level of our decks. Like, because we didn't talk about the power levels beforehand, I feel like we weren't actually all on the same page of where we should be, even though we all said we were 7s, and, like, this power level that was presented to us, like, that's kind of like, oh yeah, that's where I see myself. But I do think, like, having this kind of, like, general guideline of the power level scale is good. It's just we have to use it. We have to have those pre-game discussions, even if it is going to take, like, 8 to 10 minutes of a, like, strategy, like, breakdown. And I know that not everyone wants to kind of, like, give away what their deck does, but I would just say, like, it made some of my games really slow.
Okay, that's good to know, because that was, like, one of the major concerns I had with Command Fest 2019, was the fact that every once in a while there would just be someone who was just clearly too powerful or clearly too weak for the pod. Again, kind of stepping back a bit, did you overall still enjoy the games that you played, or was it so much of an issue that you didn't enjoy your games?
It wasn't an issue where I didn't enjoy my games, because I was doing stuff, and I was doing stuff the whole time.
Okay.
It was just more so that I felt the games could have been richer, or, it could have been more of a close call, whereas, again, people only really took advantage of the fact that I was dealing so much damage to everyone that they were then able to, swoop in and win. They kind of let me just take control. I do 30 damage to every opponent, and then they're like, okay, now is my chance. Now is the reason why I'm going to be able to win.
Mm-hmm. So they're just using you like a tool.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, maybe that's something I would do. I don't know. That sounds like just good strategy to me.
Yeah, well, actually, I will say that was kind of the case for my Perforos games. The Avacyn games went completely different, where I just tended to be kind of the person who slowed down the games, actually, because I played a lot of hate bears, because that's what the deck wants to do. I played 9 games total, 7 of those being with Perforos, 2 of them being with Avacyn. So,
quick question, how did those games go with Avacyn? Because I know that in that deck you run Mass Land Destruction.
Yep, and again, I gave the precursor to when I, got on, and I would say, hey, this is Avacyn. This is what she does. And they're like, yeah, that's exactly what I would expect from her, so you're good. I mean, if you pop off and do that, you're probably going to win. And I was like, alright, cool. And again, I played at the 7 and the 8 power level, and, I feel like that's where those kind of things are okay, because, you're going to then try and win right after that. Whereas in a 3 or 4 game, if you're just playing Armageddon or something just to blow up lands, people are going to be like, why'd you do that? Oh, well, I mean, I just thought it'd be fun.
Yep.
Okay, well that was stupid. Now this game's going to take another hour.
Okay, I was curious. I'm glad that no one got mad at you. Yeah.
Yep, no hard feelings there.
Okay. And I kind of like to move into the next section, which is the teams and scoring, because when you're playing these games, you can choose to either be Team Cat or Team Dog, correct?
Oh, I did not pay attention to any of that bullshit, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Well, that's actually interesting to me, because as someone who watched the event solely, I thought okay, this mechanic of the average person playing games in pods, you're put into either Team Cats or Team Dogs, and you can earn points based on what you do in those games, and it's connected to the people in the stream who are either Team Cat or Team Dog, and it was a points war between the two teams throughout the entire 2 days, and I thought okay, this is really connecting the average people with the people who are actually streaming, and I thought that was actually really cool to make a sense of connection between the two digital spheres. But you're saying I didn't care at all for that.
I think if I had participated in the first Command Fest Online and then competed in this one, I would have cared more, because I just wanted to focus on none of that bullshit. I just wanted to focus on my Commander games. I didn't care for Team Cats or Team Dogs, and I mean, honestly, no one in my playgroups ever mentioned, well, I did this, check mark, so that means it's a point for Team Cats. Well, shut the fuck up. We're playing Commander right now.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, and to my knowledge, too, I could have just been after each game, been yeah, 20 points for Team Dogs, because I did all this shit. It doesn't seem like it really matters.
100 points to Gryffindor.
Yeah, it's whatever. To my knowledge, there was no way of checking whether or not that was actually true.
Huh, that's interesting. I guess everyone was honest, or appeared to be honest, because it was a pretty close score. It's not one team's 10,000 points above.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think people cared enough for that outcome. It's not if one thing happened, then something would happen. It's not like if Team Dogs won, we would get to see this new preview card, or if Team Cats won, we would get to see this new preview card.
Oh, okay. You're way more harsh on that, like this mechanic than I thought you were. Okay, well, that answers my question.
Well, I think then that just, to my critique of this is, if you're going to do something like that, you kind of want to incentivize the people who are participating to have a reason to care. And there was no reason to care other than Team Cats, Team Dogs. It's just kind of one of the general, are you a cat person or are you a dog person? So, yeah. Maybe that actually happened in the lower power level games where, stuff like that kind of happened. But, when I'm playing optimally, I'm just trying to focus on doing what my deck is supposed to do best.
Okay. So if this event were to happen again, would you do it again? Like if there's a Command Fest Online 3? Because I have a feeling like there's a good chance that's going to happen because COVID's sticking around for quite a bit.
I think there's a good chance that it's going to happen because of that, and because Commander Legends will bring in so many new legendary creatures, and people are going to want an opportunity to play more. So I do think that there will be a Command Fest 3, and if there is, I will participate, and I just hope that there is more of a reason to care about, do I play with this team or do I play with that team? And I know that, during the streams, they were actually kind of paying attention to, like, trying to do stuff, and maybe that's kind of what incentivized people to watch. But yeah, I just didn't think it was like the most interesting thing.
Okay, fair enough. I'd like to kind of spend the next couple minutes just kind of talking about our final miscellaneous thoughts about all of this. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, because I was kind of curious, like, being a digital event, it's an international event, basically. Like, people from the UK can play with people in the US and Brazil and wherever. Did you, like, run into any people with, like, accents or whatnot? Because I'm just curious. Was, like, the language barrier an issue at all? Or was it mostly English-speaking people?
There was no, like, English barrier, I would say. Most of the games that I played were some kind of... Like, everyone spoke English. I never ran into that problem. The only problems that I would run into are just, like, internet connectivity issues, where there would be maybe one player who has, like, not as great internet, so he would be lagging behind for, like, 10 to 15 seconds, but that would just make it very difficult for him to interact with us and for us to interact with him. I'd say that happened in maybe, like, a third of the games.
Okay.
And I think even one guy just dropped out because it was just so frustrating for him.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that. Like, my internet where I'm at isn't always the best. It's like, you don't want to waste other people's time, so honestly, like, sometimes it's just kind of best to drop out instead of making people angry. I guess that is one of the downsides to being a digital event. I also kind of bring that up because I know when I went to Command Fest 2019 in Seattle, when I was reading a lot of the comments at that time about the event, there were tons of people internationally that were like, it's only in these 3 locations. Like, I wish it was, like, in the UK. I wish it was in Spain. I wish it was in Brazil. I wish it was in blah, 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 blah. Like, there was, like, real demand for this kind of event, like, worldwide, it seemed to me. So I'm curious, like, if this continues to have momentum, that it will eventually become outside of the US.
I definitely think that that'll happen in the future. I just think it gets a little difficult because, when Channel Fireball says, we're doing it from this time to this time, it is kind of centered in the PST time. So it is from 9 to 6 was, like, the time where you could, like, input, like, oh, I'm going to play a game. So for me, that's super convenient because that's the time that I live in. But for other people who might be even on, like, the East Coast, that kind of gets into, like, later in the night for them, and maybe that's not what they want to be doing.
I think another advantage, besides being like digital event, so that people can play all across the world, was the fact that this event also had panels. Because again, when I went to FanFest 2019 Seattle, a lot of people were like, why weren't there panels? Like, this event would have been better with panels of prominent community members and people from WotC and artists and cosplayers. And so I think they took that into consideration and had an assortment of panels throughout the event. Again, like the one we mentioned already, the future of Commander, with all those people from WotC giving all these spoilers. I think that really started this event off strong. And they played a couple games, and then they had the Commander Advisory Group panel with a couple of those members. They also had the Commander Rules Committee, the people in charge of rules and what's banned and unbanned in the format. That was kind of interesting to watch. They said a few things that were kind of interesting to me. Then they also had a panel with Alex Kessler from the MM cast, and talking about how he got his co-host Ben Bateman, who only plays competitive Magic, how he's been trying for multiple years to try and get him into Commander. And that was kind of interesting to me, because we recently did an episode of trying to get people who have never done a trading card game into Magic, but they went at it from the other end, and okay, this person's playing tournament Magic, how do we get them into Commander? It's from the other end. So I found that to be an interesting panel as well. So I think that was one upside to being a digital event.
Yeah, I paid attention to the panels that I thought were relevant to me on the day that I didn't play, and I do think that is a nice thing if, I played 3 games of Commander, I just kind of want to take a break, what kind of panel's on? Oh, so-and-so's talking right now? Let's see what they got to say. I do think maybe for the future, because it kind of seems like it was the same thing from last time where it was just a bunch of RC and CAG members talking. I would like maybe more panels to actually be focused on different content creators who, could do something a little more entertaining than just kind of talking about the rules.
Even though there were tons of... You're saying for panels specifically, more than just the Rules Committee and the CAG.
Yes. Kind of somewhat similar to what the Commander Family Reunion was that we did a few weeks back, where, there were different podcasts that talked. We did our live auction thing. So, yeah, I think things like that would be great to do for the future.
All right. Any other recommendations for the next time round?
I just think the only recommendations that I want to give are to the people that want to play, and that's just, make sure that you do take the time to kind of assess what your deck level is, and when you play the games, are you in the right group? Because I just think decks are paired more evenly with what they're meant to be, then the games are going to be a lot more fun and engaging. So even if that does mean taking the 2 to 3 minutes to talk about your deck real quick, and then maybe at the end of it you're like, oh well, looks like my deck's actually an 8, not a 7, or even though that wouldn't actually make a huge difference some of the times, because I would play with some 8s.
Sure, and that's a very difficult topic, and who knows, maybe we will revisit it in the future.
Yeah, I think just there needs to be more and more conversation about power levels, because right now it is better than where we were a year and a half ago with just 1 to 10, and we're now kind of getting descriptions of what those numbers mean. But I think we could flesh it out a little bit more about what those power levels actually mean to making the best games of Commander that we can be playing.
Okay. Well, alright then. If any of you were at the Command Fest this year, I'd be really interested to know how your experience was and whether you feel the same way that Guy does and I do. I'd be really interested if you shoot us an email or a comment. I'm really interested. So, without any further ado, I think that kind of wraps up the episode for today. We are the Wizard Staff Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to leave a like and review. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at WizardStaff101. Send us an email at thewizardstaff101@gmail.com if you want to bitch and complain about how stupid we are. Thank you all so much for listening, and we hope you have a great night. Peace.
Peace.